Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast with me, Craig Lewis. Now, first of all, a quick word to everybody about the absolutely abysmal lighting that I have here today. I'm really, really sorry, everyone. I have requested for my Christmas present from my lovely wife, Michelle, who is hopefully listening, for a backlight so you can actually see me if for some weird reason you want to do that. But anyway, here we are on the Run, Try, Bike Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. Wow, that's quite a tongue twister, isn't it, for me? Running Tales on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. Please have a little listen to all the wonderful podcasts that we have on here. Loads and loads of good stuff. Beyond the Finish Line with Joe Harden, the Fireside Chats with Jason and Ohm, all kinds of great stuff. You are hopefully listening to us now on Tuesday at 6 o'clock in the UK, perhaps a little bit later or a different time wherever you are around the world. We are live on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and X, Elon Musk's wonderful X that shaped a US election. I'll let you decide whether that's a good or bad thing yourself. But we're on there as well, and I say that just in case you're listening on the podcast and you want to catch us every second week live on those places. So anyway, enough of me rabbiting on. My guest today is the wonderful Paula Black, and Paula is someone who always dreamt of running the London Marathon, the flagship long distance event in the UK. She'd watch it every year and think about how much she'd love to take part in it. Despite that desire, she'd always sort of conclude that running that 26.2 miles was out of her reach. But eventually she did start running. We'll go into the how and why that happened. And one year, watching that marathon, she took the plunge and she entered. And she set herself a goal of 5 hours. And do you know what time Paula finished in? 4 hours, 59 minutes and 58 seconds. 2 seconds within her time. How superb is that? We'll talk to Paula about that in a minute as well. Now, there is a sad side to Paula's story as well. Her husband, David, sadly contracted MND and eventually passed away from that condition. David was a great runner himself, and Paula's run a load of races in his honour and has also now become an ambassador for the MND Association, work which she continues to this day. So anyway, without further ado, let's bring forward Paula Black. Hi, Paula. That was going okay to that last second there, wasn't it? How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Running Tales podcast. And I want to kind of rewind back to the very start of your running journey that we spoke about there, and those days where running for you was, I suppose, an event, if it's fair to say, where you sat on the couch and watched the London Marathon and dreamed that it might happen, but never really thought that it actually would.
Well, it goes back a little bit further than that, because when I was at school, I hated PE. And back in the day, you used to just go out in the snow with your shorts and T-shirt on. And I used to stand there freezing with blue legs, freezing, thinking, oh, I'm so cold, I just want to go in. I didn't realise that if I ran around, I'd actually get warm. So, I was one of those really unfit people. I used to sit on the sofa, and I honestly thought that I could never do that. That was just for the elite athletes. But I think what swung it for me is I saw one year a lot of people crawling over the finish line.
Yeah.
And it really inspired me. I don't think they probably felt inspired at the time, but it really inspired me to think, actually, if they can do it, I can do it. So that's the one and only race that I've ever actually trained properly for.
Oh, really? Well, we'll find you've done a lot of other races, so that's really interesting. But I'm actually quite interested in that little school experience, because you wouldn't believe the number of people I speak to on this who've gone on and run long distances who absolutely hated running at school because it was a punishment, or it was, as our American friends would call them, the jocks who did it. And it's such a strange thing, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, all PE, I didn't like any of it, but I think running was probably one thing that I didn't mind as much. And I remember going round the field at school, cross country, and I was actually not bad at the slower, longer races. even back in the day.
Yeah.
And this is going back to middle school. But once you, leave school, I was a chef. I didn't really do any exercise at all for many, many years. And it was only once I had the children that I thought, actually, I'm getting a little bit older now. I really ought to do something. So I started taking them to nursery and running home. The first time I ran I think it was 1.7 miles back from the children's nursery, because I thought if I run, I'll have more time at home and then I can have a shower and walk back again to pick them up.
Yeah.
1.7 miles, I honestly thought that I was going to die. It took me about 20 odd minutes to do it. And now I would call those junk miles.
Yeah. Yeah.
You wouldn't get your kit dirty to run 1.7 miles.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where my journey started. And I think the first race I ran was around about 2010, the Race for Life. And it was a couple of friends from mums from the nursery that said, oh, come on, we're going to do it. Come along, Paula, you do it with us. And it was such a great atmosphere. I think it was the atmosphere that sort of drove me on. The atmosphere at races, it's electric, especially in the beginning. I always feel quite emotional and quite tearful because I think, yes, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And the first time I finished the Race for Life, I did it in 34 minutes and I managed to run all the way. And I just felt so proud of myself.
I find that really interesting, actually, because I think my wife Michelle, or know of Michelle, and Michelle's story is so similar to yours in terms of her dad actually was a big runner, so she was always interested in running. Used to watch him do the London Marathon, but she never really ran herself. And then when she started, which was kind of because I was training to do the Milton Keynes Marathon. And she joined me on a few of those, and literally she'd be running to the end of our road. I think it was 200 meters maybe, and she'd be exhausted. And Michelle's gone on and done 19 marathons and an ultra, so it's so interesting, and people forget sometimes where they started and what they've gone on to. And I can see that in your story as well. And I think she did a Race for Life very early on as well. It's a fantastic event for getting people going, isn't it?
It really is. And I think the following race that I did was the Peterborough Half Marathon.
Yeah,
that was my very first one, and I only did that because somebody dropped out. I was just doing a lap of Pitsford every week, and that was about all my running. And Pitsford is a reservoir near where we live. It's about 6.5 miles round. Beautiful, beautiful place. And somebody fell out of the race, sort of pulled out of the race. That's the word. And I thought, actually, yeah, I'll take your place. So I ran it. And my first half was 2 hours 19. So once you've done one, you've then got to try and better it, haven't you? So I didn't do that race again, but I did do Silverstone Half Marathon. And I think I managed 2 hours 2 was my best.
Okay. Yeah, that's not quite a lot off. Yeah. Yeah.
But that was a few years later.
Yeah. I'm just interested on, obviously, you've mentioned you kind of love the atmosphere around the Race for Life and so on. And you'd always loved the idea of the London Marathon. But as someone who'd been unsporty at school, at what point did you sort of think, I actually love the process of running?
I think it's the camaraderie.
Yeah.
The amount of support and help you get from other people. I do park run most weeks, but it is really the friendships that you build up through the running.
Yeah.
And, people look out for each other. I find it hard running a race with somebody. I don't want to ever slow people down, but then I don't want to be put under too much pressure. At the end of the day, when you're racing, you're only in competition with yourself. My worst fear would be always, I don't ever want to come last. And I do have a bit of a funny story for that. I did a fell race years and years ago. It was a grade 1, as you do. But we'd just gone away for a weekend, and somebody said, "Oh yeah, we're going to do this fell race." So it was in Malham. It was 1.5 miles up and 1.5 miles down. Somebody actually fell and broke the ribs on the way down. But when you say run, I couldn't run up this hill. There was a man in a Mr. Blobby costume, a big inflatable Mr. Blobby costume, and even he beat me. Well, my husband at the time was running it dressed as Mrs. Brown, as you do, and I said to him, "Don't overtake me, because that would have been me last." So, lovely man as he was, he came last, so I didn't have
Oh,
to.
bless him.
But there was stalls and everything in this race, and this Mr. Blobby man just whizzed over them.
I don't think you've ever been a proper runner unless you've been beaten or overtaken by someone in a ridiculous costume at some point. I got taken over by I think it must have been like a 12-foot giraffe during the Milton Keynes Marathon. And that was my first marathon. And it was probably the only reason I just about crept in under 5 hours, not quite as close as you, but we'll get to that. Was because I was determined to take this giraffe back over again. So I'm a big fan of racing people in weird costumes towards the back of the pack. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And you also need to chat to our fellow Everyday Athlete podcast host, Joe Harden, about finishing DFL, because he has done it and he absolutely embraces it and loves it and just says, "Do you know what? I ran my own race and that's where I finished." And it's all good. But yeah, so you're up and running and you're starting to enjoy it, and you're getting your half marathon time down, and even though every now and again you might be being overtaken by strange people, how did you eventually get to that stage where you were entered? And I guess the question is, how did you eventually pluck up the courage to put that entry into the London Marathon?
I honestly don't know what the trigger was. All I can say is I think it must have been doing the Race for Life, because I'd only done the Race for Life, 1 half marathon, and then straight in there.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I plucked at the courage. I didn't get in on the first ballot, but if you pay your entrance fee, they put you into a separate ballot where there's another 2,000 people that can get in. And I actually got into there, and I could not believe it. I mean, the chances of getting into the London Marathon the first time on the ballot are like, I don't even know what the percentage was.
Yeah.
I mean, now there's about 850,000 apply for about 20 places, I should think. It's really slim. But I've actually managed to run it another 3 times after that. So yeah, I got into the London Marathon. I was so excited. I can't tell you how excited I was, because for many people that is the race. I didn't even know there was other marathons at the time. It was only ever the London Marathon, because we're going back to 2012 when I ran it for the first time. And religiously, I followed a training plan. I went out running. I was running about 35 miles a week. I got up to 20 miles. I could run 20 miles in 3 hours 25. And I didn't start running really till I was 40. So, I was quite pleased with that. And I used to run 3 laps around Pittsford, because I used to go on my own. I wasn't a part of a club or anything. I didn't really have friends that ran. Not that kind of distance anyway. So I used to hide drinks in the bushes, run a lap, have a drink, run a lap. And I could get to about 18 miles before I had to stop. I can't do that now, I have to say. But I trained solidly. I met a few friends through a Facebook running group. Still friends with them today. And then it came to the big day.
So I think before we dive into the big day and how it went, what was your aim? Because I mean, not everybody has a target time, but you did. You had a target time in mind before you started out.
Yeah, I thought 5 hours for a first marathon was quite a respectable time, and that was what I aimed for. And I have to say on the first, when I'd been doing the training, I could get a lot further than I could in the race without having to stop and walk. But the first time I did stop and walk, I made sure it was under a bridge so nobody could see me. Nobody else has ever done that, have they?
Yeah, there's a few safe places in London, isn't there? I've not run it myself, but I've spectated, and yeah, there's a few places where you can just hide away for a little bit and have a walk if you need
Yeah,
to.
and if nobody sees, it didn't happen.
Yeah. That's
And at
right.
the end of the day, you know, however you get there, whether you're walking it all, running a bit, you know, a bit of what's it called, fartlek training, or there's where you do 2 minutes walking, 2 minutes running. Doesn't matter how you get there. 26 miles is still 26 miles.
Yeah, Jeffing, isn't it? I think they call
That's
it.
the one, Jeffing,
Yeah.
Jeffing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got a few friends that Jeffin, and you can Jeff just as fast as you can run.
Oh, I tell you what, I did the amazing Northampton run. It wasn't this year because this year I kind of ran it a little bit within myself, but I did it last year and I did a PB. And there was a guy running along, and then he stops and he started walking, and I was like, "Oh, bless him, he's done." I said, "Oh, come on, mate, keep going." And he walked for a bit, and then about 5 minutes later, he came screaming past me again, running. And then he was walking, and then he was running, and I was like, "Now you're annoying me."
Yeah,
But yeah, he finished ahead of me by quite a distance in the end, and he was jeffing it all the way through. And I'm talking like one, I did it in 1:38, so he did it in about 1:36, jeffing it, which I just think is not that my time's incredible, but doing it, walking it in 1:36 is pretty cool, I think.
yeah, definitely, definitely. But yeah, I mean, just going onto the race a little bit. I mean, just
Yeah,
standing there in the starting pen, the emotion, and I was starting in the back pen because lots of people lie about the time they're going to race in.
yeah,
So I was at 5 hours and in the back, whereas, you know, people were finishing in sort of 8, 9 hours and they were in pens in front of me. So, you know, when you are running a race like the London Marathon, you do have to do a lot of weaving. The
yeah,
first time I ran it, I actually ran 27.5 miles because of the amount of weaving. And
yeah.
then the second time, I realised that there's a blue line. If you stick to that, you run a lot less. So, you know, I could have ran a lot quicker if I hadn't have put the extra miles in.
Yeah, definitely. But anyway, you know, that 5 hour target was set. Tell
Yeah,
people what time you finished in.
I finished it in 4 hours, 59 and 58 seconds.
2 seconds.
You got much closer, but
Yeah,
I had 1.5 miles to go and I had 25 minutes. And you know, as you're coming up to the main bits of London and you've got Big Ben and you've got the, you know, all of that amazing, you know, buildings that we've got,
yeah,
I didn't ever think that I was going to run it again. So I walked and slapped people on the hands and really
yeah,
soaked up the atmosphere. And everybody, I had my name on my chest, and everybody's saying, "Paula, you're amazing. Keep going, keep going." And it wasn't that I couldn't run it. I didn't want to. I wanted to lap it all up. So
yeah.
I don't know how I managed to get in just that 2 seconds before.
Did you know that you were there? I suppose you don't, because you never really know when you're actually running a marathon what time you're coming in, because you're starting in a different pen and it's never quite the
Yeah,
same when you cross the line, and you're relying on your watch, which is never entirely
yeah.
accurate, is
And you know, the slower runners at the back probably, or sorry, the more social runners at the back probably start 25 minutes after the start gun's gone. So you have
it?
no idea of what time you were going to do. But I knew I couldn't be far out.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I was just, and I was over the moon, over the moon. And I just cried when I finished.
And it sounds like it was everything you ever hoped it was going to be.
It really was. It really was. Yeah.
Um,
Fantastic.
and did you know that kind of that second you finished, as you were perhaps waiting for your time, or maybe just finding it out and having that little well earned cry, that you thought, "I'm going to do this again"?
I didn't think straight away because it hurt a lot. And I pretty much collapsed at the end. I gave it everything I had. And they closed horse guards. I don't know what was going on, but there was a big bottleneck at the end. So you walked along the mall, and you got your medal and everything. And what I should have done was had something to eat, a bite of something to eat and a drink, but I didn't. I stood there for an hour and I was exhausted, and all I wanted to do was sit down. So I sat down. I mean, I could have been crushed, but people around me were, this is what I mean, the camaraderie. People were around me and they were saying, come on, have something to eat, have something to drink. And I did. I had, it was a Pink Lady apple. They gave us an apple in the bags because the goodie bags were great. I had a bite of that apple. That was the best apple. It tasted the most delicious thing I could have eaten. Everybody was right. I had a drink, had something to eat, and I felt much better. But when I got out of the bottleneck, I had some friends that were supporting me, and it was so busy. I was exhausted. I thought, I don't know how I'm going to find these people. My phone wasn't working because so many people were trying to use the phones. So I sat down on the curb and just hoped they'd find me. And they did eventually. I don't know how long I sat there for. And when I saw them, I cried again.
Oh, well deserved again, really. Yeah, I mean, it is a really finishing that race. Like I say, I've never done it, but my wife Michelle has, and the emotion that she had, and we couldn't find her at the end either. And I went to the wrong meeting point, which was entirely my fault, and I hadn't run 26.2 miles. So no excuse, really. But yeah, it's such a fantastic sort of achievement and feeling, and everybody around you. There's not many situations where you get thousands and thousands of people all that closely packed in together, and everybody is so happy, and everybody's got this great sense of achievement and happiness, whether that's because of what they've done or on behalf of friends and family, really.
Yeah, I mean, I love going down there even if I'm not running. I love going down there just to support people. The atmosphere, honestly, if you've never been, just go down there. And I've sussed out a route where you can go to meet people 3 times along the route. You don't have to use the tubes or anything. You can just walk.
Oh, well, that's quite the achievement. I mean, you need to share that with people because you can make some money out of saying that.
Everybody will be doing it, won't they?
Yeah, don't tell everyone. Keep it a good secret. I mean, like I say, I love London, and I'd really be interested to hear people listening to this, watching this, if they've done other marathons around the world, how do they rank them all? Let us know. That'll be really interesting. We've done London and we've done Paris, and London's better than Paris, but I know there's lots of American listeners and they love their New Yorks and their Chicagos and their Bostons. So let's have a rank of marathons in the comments. But for you, Paula, you loved London so much that you eventually decided that you were going to go back and have another crack at it.
Yeah, well, I've actually done it in 2012, 14, 16 and 19. And surprisingly, 2019, I don't know how it happened, but I actually got a PB that year, and I managed 2 hours 44.
2 hours 44?
Sorry, no, I wish. 4 hours 44. I think I'd definitely get in on a green place the next year. 4 hours 44, which is a spiritual number. And this was after, we mentioned earlier, my husband died of MND. And that was the first marathon that I ran after it died. And, when you go into the start pen and they do all the warm up and the music and everything, well, they were playing all this really motivational music. And all of a sudden, Always Look on the Bright Side of Life came on.
Yeah.
Which is totally out of character for the rest of the songs that they were playing. And I thought, Dave's here with me.
Because that was his favourite song, or one of his favourite songs.
Yeah, well, he was such a character. He was always happy, and he used to sing that all the time. And I mean, he even made us play that at his funeral. And he, in his words, he wanted everybody standing up, swaying their arms, singing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life." So, I mean, there was about 450 people turned
Yeah.
up at his funeral. So you can just imagine what it looked like. And it was a celebration of his life. So anyway, when that song came on in the starting pen, I knew he was there. And that made me really emotional. And I'm sure that he had his hand on my back and pushed me round, because at halfway, I knew that I was going to get a PB. I don't know where it came from, because I'd only managed to train up to half a marathon.
Yeah.
I'd got 2 children. I was a single parent, and I don't know where it came from. But even at the end, I saw another lady, because I was running for the MND Association by then. And I saw a lady, and she looked like she was really struggling. And I said to her, I'm on for a PB. It doesn't matter what I do. If I walk the rest, I'm going to get a PB. So let's do this together. And we walked it and crossed the line together. And it was just such an emotional, I mean, the London Marathon is an emotional day, but to know that I got it in 4 hours 44, which I never dreamt that I could have done that. And yes, I could have done it quicker if I hadn't have helped that lady. And I don't even know what her name is. But I could have probably done it in 4.5 hours, but it was more important to me to support her to get across the line and do it together.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's absolutely lovely, and I think that kind of epitomizes the spirit of running when you're kind of outside of that elite bubble, which is sort of what
Yeah,
we're about at the end of the day. Yeah, we all like times, we all like PBs, but helping somebody else and getting round and enjoying the race is
yeah,
probably the more important thing. And it sounds like that was a really special day for you all round.
it really was. Yeah. I mean, I have done other marathons, not just the London Marathon. I would
Yeah.
say a really important one that I did was the Rob Burrows Leeds Marathon in 2023.
Yeah.
That was a tough one. Who puts a 4-mile hill in a marathon at mile 17? That's just cruel. And I did actually see Rob Burrow at the end of it. He was sitting outside waiting with his dad, waiting for a lift home in his wheelchair. By this time, he couldn't speak. For those of you that don't know who Rob Burrow is, he's a rugby player, used to play for Leeds Rhinos. And he recently, well, June, died of MND. So at this stage, he was being pushed around in a wheelchair by a amazing gentleman called Kevin Sinfield, who's done lots and lots of challenges. He is a machine. There's no doubt about it. So anyway, Kevin had probably gone home by this time, and Rob was sitting outside in his wheelchair with his dad, and he couldn't speak, and he had one of these eye gaze technology things where he could speak using his eyes. And I said, Rob, that was a brilliant race. I said, but can you take the hill out next year? He gave me the loveliest smile, and I'll hold that in my heart all the time, because, you know, he might have had advanced MND, but, you know, you saw that twinkle in his eye, and oh, he was just such a wonderful man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing some of our sort of people from all around the world have probably don't know the story of Rob and Kevin. But for us in the UK, it kind of touched hearts throughout the country, really, to listen to their story and see the amazing things that they did together, and that bond of friendship that they had from playing rugby at the highest level. I think they both played for England, certainly played for Leeds Rhinos at the very highest level, and then just taking that on when Rob became ill, and doing such amazing things together. It touched the nation, really, didn't it? And for you, with your personal story, it must have been 2-3 times as much, I guess.
It's been amazing, because, you know, through going through one of the worst times in their life, as I did, you know, they had a platform and they used it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they were very private people, but they shared their story, and the difference it's made to people living with MND has just been phenomenal. You
Hmm.
know, we can do a lot more research, we can help more people, and it's getting people talking about it as well.
Yeah, because it was kind of, I don't know if this is fair, but I think it was probably kind of a condition that people had heard of, but nobody really, because it comes with just initials, and nobody really necessarily knew what it was. Oh, it's serious, but I don't quite know what it was. And but now people do know, mainly because of the work that they've done, and people like Doddy Weir and so on as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, David was diagnosed in 2014. Before that, he was an amazing runner.
Mm.
I've done a few races in his memory, and because he couldn't run anymore, I did them. And his just changing the subject slightly, his last marathon was the London Marathon as well.
Yeah.
He'd run it lots and lots of times. I've lost count. But yeah, I've forgotten where I was going now.
Well, tell us about David and the running that he did first of all, and then obviously maybe move on to
Yeah.
kind of how your life changed and his life changed when he got MND.
Yeah, so I was a new member to a running club after I ran the London Marathon, and did it without knowing any other runners. I joined a running club,
Yeah.
and he was there. And David was the kind of person, he would always run at the back to make sure that all the ladies were okay. He was such a gentleman, he wasn't bothered about times or anything. And I just remember thinking what a lovely man he was. Um, yeah, so eventually, we started seeing each other. He was quite a bit older than me, and I always remember him running up a hill behind me, and I just wanted to stop, and he'd go, "Paula, keep going, keep going, keep going, don't stop." And he gave me so much encouragement, but just not me, everybody.
Yeah.
He did used to like to dress up, and he was quite eccentric. Nobody had a bad word to say against him, and I can't imagine how he got away with some of the things he said and did, because he was a bit like a character from a Carry On film. But yeah, I mean, I owe a lot of my running journey to him.
Hmm.
And then when he got diagnosed with MND, we talked about it to people at the running club, and we decided to tell all of our friends as well. But before that, I didn't have a clue what MND was.
Yeah.
2014, the Ice Bucket Challenge happened, which I do believe started off in America, and it just went viral. And I did it for a different charity. I hate to say that now, because I thought, well, I don't know what MND is. I only knew of Stephen Hawkins. So
Yeah.
I did the Ice Bucket Challenge, and little did I know at that very time, my husband had MND. He wasn't actually my husband at that time, but he had MND, and the first we knew about it was he started getting twitching in his arms. And that went on and on and on. And I said to him, "Oh, you really ought to go to the doctors. That's not normal to have twitching like that." And then he started having problems with his hands. He couldn't use his fingers. I thought he was trying to get out of hanging the washing out personally. But then I realised actually it wasn't. So he went to the doctors. They had loads and loads of tests. It took about 10 months to get diagnosed. And sadly, he was on his own when he got diagnosed, because he didn't expect to get the diagnosis that day.
Yeah.
He said, I remember him saying, because I'd gone to give blood, so I couldn't go. So I remember him saying he walked out of that hospital and he'd been given this big, thick book, and he just walked through the park on his own. He said nobody was about, and I just fell to my knees and cried. So when I got home, he was already sitting at home in the conservatory with a beer, and I thought, well, that's what's going on. He
Hmm.
doesn't drink. And he said to me, I've got MND, and gave me this book, and I opened this book up, and it said, you've got 2 years to live. And that's the first thing I read. And getting a diagnosis like that, the grief starts straight away. And if I couldn't see him, I thought that he was dead. So it was really hard. But I spoke to somebody and they said to me, okay, you're allowed to cry. What you're feeling is normal. So I did. And after a week, I thought, I can't carry on like this. He's still here. We've got to make the most of it. So that's what we did.
Yeah.
And we did lots of talking at conferences. We were part of the My Eyes See Global Awareness Day. And we just did everything we could in our little platform to try and make a difference. And that's really how I ended up working at the MND Association, because I was so passionate about it. Dave just wanted to help people. And I really thought, yeah, I could do this. And so it's led me to do a lot more events, because not only do I work for them, I fundraise for them.
Yeah.
And it gives me the opportunity to talk about events and running all day long, which I love doing.
Yeah. Well, running is, I mean, we'll get onto this maybe in a second, but running is such a great platform for fundraising for all kinds of different charities. But I just maybe wanted to give you the opportunity, because we've perhaps sort of given a I don't know, a knowing nudge to say, oh, maybe people didn't know about MND, but now they do. But actually, potentially a lot of our listeners now might not still know. So I just wondered if you might be able to just perhaps explain what MND is for people and kind of the effects it has on those people who do have it.
Okay, yeah, of course. So MND, motor neurones disease, as it says. Sorry, I should call it the proper name, but motor neurones disease.
Yeah.
Basically, the connections from your brain to your muscles stop working, and everything can shut down, but your mind stays okay in most cases. There are some cases where you can get a form of dementia as well. But in most cases, your legs stop working, your hands stop working. And at the very end, all you can pretty much do is move your eyes. I was a sole carer pretty much for Dave in the latter stages. But we did have amazing help from friends. As I mentioned earlier, I was part of a running club, and I could just ask any one of the people there, can you come and help me? I've got Dave stuck. You know, he couldn't move his legs. I was hoisting him around, and people would drop everything and come and help. You know, that is the amazing part of running community. If I needed to go out, I could get somebody to come and look after him. You know, he was just one of those characters, and even when he couldn't talk, you know, he still had a twinkle in his eye. There was a lovely friend that he made through the community, the MND community, because, you know, it can be quite a lonely place living with something like MND and caring for somebody with MND. And he made this very close friend. And in the end, all they could do, they had like a tablet device that they could communicate on. He never banked his voice. We weren't very technology orientated then. And back then, there wasn't all the progress that there is now with the technology. And, you know, there's so many things that you can get to help now. So he just used to send gifts to this person, and they just used to laugh and, you know, make the most of every day. And even at the end, when David was really, really poorly, often he didn't want to go out. You know, it can make you feel quite depressed. But I used to make him go out. I used to take him out just to a coffee shop, just to see a different set of walls. If I was out in the garden, I'd put him out in his chair. He'd watch me do the planting, and he would get upset sometimes because he would say, oh, you're doing all this and I can't help you. One day I was planting some plants and he leaned out to try and help me and fell over into the plants that I just planted. But you have to, sometimes something like MND does give you a bit of black humour, and you turn around and say, "Oh, Dave, look, you've just crushed all the plants that I've just planted," you
Yeah.
know, and you
Uh,
you
yeah.
have to laugh,
It's a
but
laugh
not,
or cry situation, isn't it? I
yeah,
suppose.
and
Yeah.
not everybody can.
Yeah.
So yeah, MND is the signals from the brain to the muscles. Um, there's a fault and they stop working.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, and the real tragic thing about it, if I've got it right, is there's no cure at the moment, is there? It is, to use a horrible phrase, a life sentence, and that's what the work of people like the MND Association is doing to try and find that cure.
yeah. So I mean, there are a few drugs that are coming out now. There's Riluzole, which was around when David had MND, and he took Riluzole, and it was supposed to give you an extra 3 months for every year that you have MND. I personally don't know that it worked for David.
Yeah,
For us, it was probably more of a crutch or more of a hope, because you want to have hope. There is a drug called tofazen, which can slow down MND in a small percentage of people if they've got a certain gene, and that would be the familial gene, because about 10% of people have the familial gene with MND, but most people it's random. There is a connection to things like head injuries, um, you know, pesticides. There's lots of things that they've said could cause it, but
Hmm.
trying to find out. I mean, it's such a complex disease, and there's 4 or 5 strains of MND, but they can all mutate.
Right.
So you might start with it in your legs, like I say, and it might go up into your throat and your it just basically paralyzes you. So all you can move at the end is your eyes. You have
Yeah.
to get good at charades.
Yeah, that's
What
the
you
answer.
can do is move your thumb like this, and you'd have to say, "Oh, do you want me to move your leg?" And you'd either get a yes or no, because that's
Yeah,
and
that's the only
that is a lot of movement. A lot of people couldn't even do that.
Yeah, yeah, and just going back to what we were talking about earlier in your role now, how important is running to raise that vital, well, money and awareness of the condition to help all the research that's trying to help those sufferers with it.
We have so many people that run. I mean, obviously, fundraising has a lot of other events. Not everybody can run, so people do what they can. But
Yeah,
as running, there's so many different events you can do now. Um, I've also done lots of 100Ks, action challenges, fantastic events. I could talk about them forever as well. But yeah, I mean, running is such a community that it's just so, oh, I don't know how I would have got through the last few years without it.
yeah. Yeah. No, it does some amazing things, and I've done articles on our Running Tales Substack before about the difference that fundraising can make to a whole host of different charities, and it really is fantastic. And going back to the London Marathon, so
Yeah,
much money raised for charity; it's absolutely mind
yeah,
blowing. But you've
yeah.
opened the door. You've opened the door to my next line of inquiries, which was to talk
Okay.
about these utterly crazy long races that you do, 100 Ks. You've done a whole host of them, haven't you?
I have. The main ones that I've done are action challenges. Don't know if I'm
Yeah.
allowed to plug that.
Uh,
But yeah, absolutely
Although
love
Action
them.
Challenges, if you're listening, you can sponsor us on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. Get in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, I love them. I've done 6 full continuous 100Ks. I mainly walk them, but I do a bit of running as well, and just try and beat my time. I've done
Yeah.
the Cotswold Way, the Wye Valley, London to Brighton, the Yorkshire Challenge, the Peak District Challenge, and they're not nice little flat paths that you walk along. They're challenging.
Yeah.
They really are. But the food stops that you get on these challenges, the welcome from the volunteers, they're just such well organized, fabulous events. I often do them on my own because I don't mind walking on my own. I can just stop and talk to anybody. You might gather, I'll just talk to anybody. And I've made friends on these challenges that, the support you give each other. Again, it's all about support and helping people get through tough times. There was one lady that I remember, I'm not going to say her name just in case she's listening, but her and her husband, well, she was walking it on her own, and her husband and the dog were at each rest stops. I've never managed to get my husband to go to any of the rest stops. He normally just picks me up at the end. Anyway, this guy was up all night supporting his wife, picking her up at each rest stop with the dog, giving her all encouragement. And then she met me. She was about to give up at 50K. And her husband said the difference in this lady after she met you, she believed she could do it. Because I love encouraging people. And afterwards, they donated £100 to my cause because they said we wouldn't have done it without you. And there was a guy that we met as well. And we were 3 people from the most extreme walks of life that you never would have put together.
Yeah.
But we became social media friends afterwards because of the experience that we'd shared. I remember the first one I did, you're supposed to wear walking shoes. I never wore walking shoes again after. I had blisters on my blisters.
Yeah.
And doing a challenge like this is really, I'd say, more mental than physical. Mental because people think you're crazy doing it, but mental because you've got to forget about the pain and switch it off. And it is possible. For a while on that challenge, I could feel my blisters squelching. But then I just had to think, okay, it's only walking. If I stop walking, I'm not going to get any further. Whereas if you're running, you can run, you can walk to make it easier for yourself. When you're walking, you can't do that. You've just got to keep going.
Yeah.
You've just got to turn off that, oh, it hurts from your mind and just finish it, get it done. I've always done them in under 24 hours, so I'm really proud of.
I think that time, I think doing it in under 24 when you're walking most of it is fantastic with those distances. I mean, I've done the Isle of Wight challenge, which I think is an action challenge one, and we did it just under 24. But we kind of ran the first 20 miles of it, jogged, but still, well, I say ran. There was a lot of hills and we walked the hills, but we walked the first 20 miles and then kind of walked the rest, and just crept in under 24. So you must be walking at a decent pace or getting some sort of good running in those boots every now and again.
Well, I wore trainers after that first one, and I never had a blister after that. But I just I have this strategy where the first half, up until night time, I will walk at 4 miles an hour. And that's quite a challenge for 32 miles. So that's the challenge I set myself, speed it out, get walking. At halfway, 50K, I'll stop, I'll brush my teeth, wash my face, freshen myself up, change my clothes, and then I know that I can slow down to about 2 miles an hour, because in the night I almost pretty much sleepwalk. The only thing is, when you do something like London to Brighton, that's when you get the styles. When you've walked 50K and you've got to start going over. I think there was 22 styles at last count.
Oh, wow.
Hard work. And then
Yeah.
you're walking through wooded areas and everything in the dark. You look to your left and there's, you know, a sheer drop.
Yeah.
Oh, I could go on talking about them forever.
No, they're fantastic events, and you do see some amazing countryside, and I really think they're kind of like they're a challenge like no other. When we did the Isle of Wight, and you've probably seen people like this, we had a chap who was in the group of people who were doing it with us because we were doing it for a different charity, and there was a whole load of us, and this lad was early 20s, a really good runner. He'd done a sub 3 hour marathon a few months beforehand, so top good runner. And he got to about 70K, and he had a few blisters, and he was just exhausted. He couldn't go another step, and he had to stop. He had to drop out. And that's I don't mean that to be critical of him, but it's just like you'd have looked at him and thought he was an incredible runner who should be easing through this. And then you look at like me and Michelle in our late 40s and walking along, and we were the ones who finished it, because I think there was a different mindset from doing these longer things, and almost sort of the power of being able to run slowly.
Yeah, and people think walking, oh, it's just walking, it's easy. But walking 62 miles is hard. And you know, you've really got to have the mental capacity. I've never been a quick runner. Actually, one of my favourite races, it was an ultra I managed to do, and it was along out and back along the Thames. And I really enjoyed it because I must be a bit mean, really. All the fast runners, you could see how exhausted they look, because normally they're recovered by the time I finish, and seeing them look rough was a real boost.
Yeah, definitely. No, there's nothing better than seeing an elite or really good runners struggling when you're actually doing.
I know. We shouldn't laugh. It's a bit mean, but yeah, going back to the action challenge again. One of the last ones that I did, one of my colleagues at work, I'm not going to again mention any names. He's left now, but he was a lot younger than me and a lot, I would say, fitter. And he was doing the 100K and I was doing 50K. He started a couple of hours ahead of me, and I'm sure he didn't finish the half before I did. And all I wanted to do was get back before him, because I'm competitive in my own little way.
Oh, there's nothing better than having a little humble brag over a work colleague, is there?
I know.
Yeah, definitely. Just looking back at your whole journey of running, how much enjoyment and happiness would you say that the sport has given you, and how grateful are you that you took those first steps to just running to the nursery and back?
When I'm actually running, I don't enjoy it at all. No, that's not true. I enjoy running with my friends on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I don't like to run too quickly. I like to have a look around, see what's around us, the beautiful scenery. I love being out in the countryside. I love being out in the fresh air. It's so good for your mental health. You know, I can go out and feel really not in the mood, and half of the battle is getting over that front door. We had a little conversation the other day at work, because now it's getting dark at night. It's getting harder to get out. And we have a little running club at work, and somebody said, "Oh, I don't feel like it tonight." I said, well, the beauty of running from work is you've got to go outside. Whereas if you're at home and you're all snuggled up on your sofa, you don't have to. So we do go running from work. But, you know, the friendships that I've made through running and the support, I couldn't have got through some of what I've been through without it. And I would definitely recommend, you know, just get out there and do it. Go to parkrun. You know, the parkrun community, I mean, that alone, you know, it's a free event every Sunday. They're all over the country. They're all over the world. You know, and you can time yourself and get better each week.
Yeah, and we
And
have
go,
loads. We have loads in Northampton. We're very lucky.
we do. Next weekend I'm going to do one in Leeds. A couple of weeks ago I was in Blackpool. So if you're somewhere on a Saturday morning,
Yeah,
it's almost like religion now. Go to parkrun, have a coffee and breakfast afterwards, social.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing how people now will plan holidays around parkrun, or will at least when they've got their holidays booked, will go, well, hold on, I've got to make sure I get
Yeah.
my parkrun in on Saturday morning before we
I
plan the
need a
rest.
why.
Yeah, you need a why. You got to complete your alphabet challenge. We went over to Zuider Park in Holland not so long ago to tick that one off ourselves. So yeah, been there, done that.
I've got another colleague at work, and I don't know if he'll be listening, but he always says, "Oh, Paula, you're so inspirational." And I was sitting in the office with him one day and I said, "You could run a half marathon. You could do that." And I don't think he ever thought that he could.
Hmm.
Anyway, we trained together. The first time we went out, I thought, oh God, it's better than I thought. But I didn't realise he was just about dying inside like I was on that very first run.
Yeah,
But he
yeah,
was trying to keep up with me. Anyway, we carried on running. And unfortunately, I was poorly on the day that we were supposed to run the half marathon together. But from being a non-runner to running the Northampton half within 6 months in
yeah,
2 hours 30, and the confidence that it gave him, the difference. Now he's an avid park run runner. I said, right, now you've done your half marathon, right, you need to do park runs. So he goes every week and he's
yeah.
much quicker than me now. And he
Create,
likes that. But then
create
we
a
start
monster.
talking, well, then we start talking age gradings because he is
Yeah,
about 18 years younger than me. And I said, yeah, but what's your age grading?
yeah, exactly. But I think that's a really interesting point in there around like this sport. Okay, we're not all going to be, I don't know, Elliot Kipchoge or the fastest ultra runner in the world or Kilian Jornet or Usain Bolt, but I think everybody, with unless you've sort of got a disability that prevents you from doing it, everyone can get out and gain some enjoyment from running and can get better at it and can do these half marathons and even ultras, can't they?
Yeah, and a lot of them, they can do them in a wheelchair as well, as we know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's a really good point. I think, we've had some fantastic wheelchair athletes on this. And one of the most inspirational conversations I had a while ago was a lady who did the Comrades Marathon of all things in a wheelchair. And it's sensational what the human body can do, even when faced with adversity, I suppose.
yeah, yeah. And it just gives people hope, and it makes you happy. You can't not be happy when you've just completed a race and you've crossed that finish line and you get a round of applause. How can you be sad then?
And then someone hands you a medal and some
Yeah,
food.
I've got my medals all just inside the door. So whenever I open the door to it, oh, look at all your medals. Oh, yeah. I didn't win any races, but I won because I entered them.
Yeah, yeah. You took those first steps and you signed that entry form and you did it and you went out there and you completed them. That's a real win, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Oh, well, Paula, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running Tales podcast. That hour has absolutely flown by. Really fascinating stuff. Just very quickly, if anybody wants to learn more about the MND Association or to donate or whatever, where should they go?
You can go to our website, the MND Association. .org. Just have a look on our website. There's loads of information on the research that we're doing. You can donate. You can do gifts in your wills. So much on that website. Just take a look there or give us a call. Our number's 01604 611 860.
Superb. Thank you very much. That's brilliant. And thank you again for joining us and chatting about your own running journey today. Folks, if you enjoyed this episode of the Running Tales podcast on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network, give us a positive like, give us a review. Just tell all your friends about us. Come and check us out. We'll have loads more episodes. We're bi-weekly, but there's tons and tons of other content that we do on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. And I tell you what, it's all really, really good. So yeah, thanks, Paula, for joining me. And thank you, everybody else, for watching and listening.
Oh, thank you for asking. Bye-bye.
Bye.